The story begins with the fact that we see a boy standing alone in the mountains at the age of 16, already very strong and constantly improving his skills. He was so strong that he could split a mountain in two with a single blow. The name of this boy was Zhang Ruochen. He was one of the 9 emperors of Kunlun during training. While Zhang was training, someone shouted at him, and someone said that his sword skills had improved even more. It was Chiyao, the daughter of one of the 9 Kunlun, who was pleasantly surprised because she was his girlfriend. They had known each other since they were children, and everyone always said that their relationship would one day be written in history. Chiyao ran towards him and hit him on the shoulder, causing blood to start flowing from Zhen's shoulder. He began to scream loudly and ask why she was doing this if they loved each other. Ruochen asked Chiyao why she wanted to kill him. The girl he loved with all his heart turned out to be a completely different person. He reached out his hand, and he woke up, screaming that he was no longer the same as 800 years ago. A woman asked him if he was having terrible dreams again, and he told her not to worry, that it was just a dream. It turned out to be his mother who was worried about him. Her name was Lin. She told him that he had been very weak and sickly since he was a child, and his illness confined him to his bed. This woman was not Ruochen's real mother. His real son had died 3 days ago. She gave Ruochen some medicine to drink after his rebirth. Lin was just a stranger to him, but in 3 days, she constantly worried about him as if he were her own child. He couldn't remember ever seeing his own mother in a past life, but now, in another body, he felt genuine maternal love. Lin asked Ruochen who Chiyao was because he had been saying her name in his dreams for 3 consecutive nights. Someone started screaming near the Jade Palace on the 3rd night. It was Munir shouting at the crowd of men. He asked the crowd what they were doing on the grounds of the Jade Palace. One of those present struck the maid in the stomach, and she cried out in pain and fell. The man was a prince. He asked what right the maiden had to prevent him from entering the palace and began to threaten her with death. Lin rushed out of the palace and started asking the maid what had happened and what the screams were about. She ran towards Munir and began helping her up. Lin began to speak with the prince and told him that, although he was a prince, he had the right to burst into the Jade Palace like that. The prince began to say that now, by order of the queen, the rooms of the concubine Lin and the 9th brother would be in the Purple Palace, and the owner of the Jade Palace would now be the mother of the prince. Munir began to worry that the queen would want to expel them so quickly, but she agreed to her order and said that she and Ruochen would move to the Purple Palace tomorrow. However, someone in the crowd called her. It was the prince. He said that his mother wanted to be in the Jade Palace tonight, so now they had to move to the side palace. Lin began to explain to the 8th prince that his 9th brother is now in very bad condition, and it is already nighttime outside. The prince says that many people have died in this world, but not all of them are worthy of pity. He thinks that if his 9th brother is very ill and weak, then why should he continue living in this world? Lin's mother is very impressed by what she heard the prince say about her brother. She tells the prince that this is his 9th brother and asks how he can say that. Ruochen's voice was heard from behind, and he asked Lin not to convince them to stay and that they should leave right now. The prince was surprised that his brother was coming out. Lin ran to her son and began to ask him why he was going out in such cold weather, but Ruochen said that it makes no sense to convince them because they will return to the palace sooner or later. Lin cried and looked at Ruochen. Ruochen and Lin set off, and every mortal must follow orders, so they did. Ruochen had never endured such humiliation in his past life. Now everyone understands that Lin has lost her status, and they probably will never return to the royal palace. In today's cruel world, only strong people resist and get what they want, and weak people obey them. Weak people who cannot achieve everything have only one path to death. They arrived at a village and entered a house. Ruochen remembered that tomorrow would be the day of sacrifice and asked his mother if she didn't remember correctly. She said that in tomorrow's sacrifice ceremony, she would unseal her martial arts seal and thus become a master, demonstrating her power to everyone. The divine martial seal is a gift granted to humans by the gods to practice martial arts. Those who do not discover it will never be able to develop true energy and become truly strong individuals. At the age of 10, the 8th prince discovered the divine martial seal, and now he is considered a young martial artist at the level of Hasai. Lin thinks to herself that her son is already 16 years old and still hasn't managed to open the divine battle seal. She believes that after 16 years, it is almost impossible to open it, and even if he does, he has already lost his best years in martial arts and won't achieve much in his life. But despite all her thoughts, she tells Johann that she believes in him. Lin told her son that it was time to rest because tomorrow was a tough day for the ceremony. He agreed and told her that she should rest too. Suddenly, Lin remembered that she wanted to ask who Chao was, whom he called in his dream. But Johann said it was an illusion, and only she heard it. His mother replied that he should never mention that name again, not even in a dream. She added that Chao is the one who united the 9 realms, created the Central Empire, and rules all the lands of Kunlun. Lin told Johann that it's disrespectful to call the Empress by her name and that if someone suddenly hears this, the person who addressed her by her name alone will be executed. But Johann assured his mother to be calm and that it wouldn't happen again. He thought to himself that he would be her nightmare now. Every year, all the districts must pay tribute and taxes to the First Central Empire, and the person who rules all the districts is called the Prince of the Districts. The sacrifice ceremony is a national celebration in Yunyu. During this celebration, children receive their sacred mark. One of the brothers told Johann that he was already 16 years old and that even though he would be present at the sacrifice ceremony, he still wouldn't receive his long-awaited mark, but he would only be embarrassed. The 6th prince also joined the conversation and added that thanks to the king, 9 children were born, and each of them was unique. But 8 of them had already received their marks, unlike Johann, who was already 16 years old. Zhang Chen stood up and just listened, even though he found it very unpleasant to hear. The 6th prince angrily asked why he was still alive and what the meaning of his existence was. The 8th prince said that even though they had royal blood running through their veins, it wouldn't be difficult for them to obtain the mark, but it might be for commoners. He added that Johann might not even be the son of a king at that moment. The 6th prince responded that he had heard of such a thing and that Johann was simply disgracing their royal family. Johann mentally calmed down and didn't waste his energy until he was strong enough. In a past life, his father had given him a white stone for his 16th birthday, but he didn't expect to still have it even after 800 years. Johann wondered if the stone had any connection to his rebirth. At that moment, the chief commander of Yunyu County announced that the sacrifice ceremony was starting right now. The 3 girls began to play the bells, the burly man wielded his sword and cut off the pig's head, and at that moment, the tags began to fly out of the large tank. Everyone was amazed by this beauty, and someone shouted loudly that they bore sacred marks. One tag flew towards the young boy, and he smiled happily. This was the youngest son of General Shui. He was only 6 years old and had already received the tag. This tag belonged to the 4th grade, and this child had a wonderful and successful future ahead. General Shui joyfully announced that it was his son who had received the mark and invited everyone to a celebration party he was hosting in honor of his son. Many sacred marks were given, and all the parents rejoiced and shouted loudly that their children were receiving sacred marks. But Johann remained silent, hoping to receive his sacred mark today. He was getting nervous because the ceremony was coming to an end, and he still hadn't received his sacred mark. He looked at the stone his father had given him, and here's this last tag. But who will get it? Everyone held their breath, and it flew towards Johann. He felt a surge of strength and inspiration. He thought to himself that he was rejoicing and thought that the sacred mark had finally appeared to him. He had been waiting for it for quite some time and was almost disappointed that he would receive it, but in the end, it was his. Everyone whispered that this is the 9th son of the king, and if it's possible to get a tag at the age of 16, everyone knows that Zen's health has been very poor since childhood, so it's not easy for him. Johann's brothers were amazed and discussed whether such a thing was possible and if it didn't seem like he had received his mark. A short elderly man entered the tent and said that the 9th prince had received his mark. The queen, who was sitting in this tent, ordered him to be brought. This man humbly bowed to the queen and approached Johann. At that moment, Johann was talking to his mother, and they were happy that he had received a tag, and she told him that she was proud of him. The elderly man approached Lin and Johann, greeted them, and told them that the queen was calling them to personally determine to which class the tag belonged. Lin asked anxiously who had called them. Ruochen realized that his mother was very frightened and began to understand that the queen must be very cunning. But then he calmly called Lin, and they went together to see the queen. The queen said that the king wanted to be alone this year for the purification, so she would oversee the ceremony this year. She turned to the chief commander and asked if he had already determined which mark the 9th prince had received. He replied that the sacred mark Bible contained all the marks of martial arts masters, but none matched the mark of the 9th prince. The queen pointed out that if the tag cannot be identified, it means it has no class, and this is because the prince is already 16 years old and won't be able to achieve anything significant. Therefore, to preserve the resources of the royal purification family, they will only give him a bottle of liquid to cleanse the cerebral cortex. But Lin anxiously asked the queen why Zuul only received one, while the 7th prince had been given 12 bottles of cerebral cortex cleansing liquid when he received his mark. The queen replied that the 7th prince received a 7th grade tag and was only 7 years old. How could Lin compare them? One of the brothers commented that the 7th brother, the queen's son, had inherited a very strong lineage from the queen, and no one in Yunyu County could match him. He added that the tip of his 7th brother's finger is much more precious and important than the life of the 9th brother. Lin is still worried and says that the 8th prince received 4 bottles of cerebral cortex cleansing liquid when he received his sacred mark. But the queen pointed out that the more talented the prince, the more resources he will receive. Considering that the 9th brother is the weakest among all the brothers, he will receive the least amount of bottles of cerebral cortex cleansing liquid. Lin anxiously wanted to add something, but she didn't have time to finish, and the queen interrupted her, saying that if concubine Lin contradicts her again, she will fail once more. Johann thought to himself about what it meant to be defeated again. Lin remained anxiously silent and didn't know where to turn from embarrassment. Johann thought to himself that his mother has gone through many hardships in life, and he should work hard to help Lin become stronger. The queen's concubine called Johann to collect his reward for the sacred mark he had received. He approached and took his bottle of cerebral cortex cleansing liquid. Then he approached Lin's mother and told her that it was time for them to return. The queen told Johann that an evaluation of the royal family would be conducted in months, and he should work hard to reach the bone marrow cleansing and channel advancement stage. But one of the brothers asked the queen if it was possible to do it in 3 months. The 9th brother needs at least a year to achieve the result. However, Zen thought to himself that they should wait, he won't disappoint them. Johann said he passed the first stage in self-cultivation, and with this, he opened the Kipal, but he was prepared because this body is very weak. So he plans to open a pool the size of an egg, but he knows it's not enough to store true K. He believes the pool's size will increase as he cultivates, and he will simply focus on establishing meridian practice. Johann is eager to show everyone that he can reach the bone marrow cleansing and channel advancement stage in less than 3 months, even though he won't achieve it today. He will become a warrior training with the utmost of his strength. There's only one step left to reach the first meridian, and he's determined to achieve it by putting his last bit of effort into his dream. He takes a decisive step towards his goal and almost succeeds. He exhales with a happy soul. Johann has reached the stage of bone marrow cleansing and channel advancement, and he's most likely in the initial level of the yellow realm. In general, martial arts practice is divided into the yellow, black, earth, and heaven realms, and each realm has 7 levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced, dawn, final, and ultimate. After building the meridians and learning true K in the beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels, the strength of the body increases. Many advanced level warriors could discover the Bai power technique, but even after that, those who reached the dawn level received the power of the 4 bulls, which was 4 times stronger than before. Johann says that in 3 months, he will reach the advanced level and prove to everyone in the annual evaluation that he's worth something. Most importantly, he will work hard to save his mother's honor. Mother Lin entered the house and went into the room where Johann was training. She looked at him and told herself that he was so focused on improving that she didn't want to disturb him or distract him from his training. Johann continued training, not only physically but also spiritually. During his training, he kept thinking. He says that after 9 circulations, the amount of true K keeps doubling. Zen uses Emperor Ming's writing exercises, and the absorption speed is quite fast, but still too slow for him. He thinks that if he had a spiritual stone, his practice would be much more effective and faster. Here, he remembers what a spiritual stone could mean for him. He reached into his pocket, took out the stone from his pocket, and looked at it, thinking it might be his spiritual stone. Suddenly, something strange began to happen. The stone started to shine, and so did the mark on his forehead. His spiritual stone began to act and show what his stone meant exactly. Johann thought to himself that he had never seen symbols like the time and space spinel before. He had injected true K into the white spinel many times in the past but had never seen any symbols. He didn't understand if it was possible that this wasn't real but some natural force, in which case his mark might have some natural origin corresponding to this time and space spinel. In nature, 90% of spiritual stones don't have individual essence, but some have special attributes. For example, the flame, lightning, and blood spirit stones, all crystals that can help warriors with sacred marks develop the same attributes faster. Johann says that he knew a lot in his past life, but he had never heard of the time and space spinel. However, after all, humans can't control time, and even the gods must obey these rules. Suddenly, his spiritual fire activated, and he was surprised and didn't understand what was happening. He began to fall into a state of confusion, not comprehending what had occurred, and suddenly, the stone began to draw Zen toward its center. Johann found himself in an incomprehensible place and started to fall, landing face down on the ground. After losing a couple of teeth, he says it's good that he has become stronger. If his body were as weak as before, he wouldn't have survived such a fall. Sitting on the ground, he didn't understand where he was, what was happening, and how he had gotten there. Johann noticed a book and a scroll that had appeared, but he didn't understand what they were or why they were there. He wanted to pick them up but couldn't. He tried with all his strength but still couldn't lift them. He couldn't understand why they wouldn't budge from their place. So, he decided to see what was written in the book. As he looked at the book, he realized he had seen something similar before. When Johann touched it, the book activated and started glowing. In the end, it turned out to be a transcription of the Holy Monk Shuma. He was the last known owner of the time and space spinel and had the same sacred mark as Johann. The Holy Monk Shuma had died over 300,000 years ago. Johann realized that the place he was in now was the inner environment of his spinel, where time flowed completely differently. 3 days in this world were equivalent to 1 day in the real world. This meant that Johann had much more time than others, which was fantastic. Suddenly, he noticed that a page of the book was missing. On this page, it was written that you had to reach the dawn level to open the scroll. Johann wondered what would be written next in this book. He was happy because he thought that many different exercises related to the practice of time and space could be written there. He needed to reach the dawn level as soon as possible to find out what was there. Suddenly, he felt his stomach rumbling, and he realized he was hungry. He told Johann that with the time and space spinel, he had many more opportunities to reach an advanced level in just 3 months. So, he could take his time. He interrupted his story to talk about how hungry he was, sitting down at the table. Johann thought that after becoming a warrior, his usual diet wasn't enough. He wondered what he should do now. Lin told Johann that now that he had received his sacred mark, he shouldn't eat common food anymore. She gave him a glass and told him to drink 10 drops of blood. But if he needed more, Lin would find as much as he needed. Johann was surprised and asked Lin how she could afford to buy 10 drops of blood. If 1 drop was worth 10 silver coins and 10 drops were 50 silver coins, where did she get so much money? Lin looked annoyed at the concubine and told her son that it didn't matter how she got the money. The main thing was that as long as he became a true warrior, she would support him even if she had to sell all her valuable possessions for it. Johann assured his mother that he would do everything in his power to become a true warrior and protect her. However, in his mind, he was worried because he couldn't tell her that he had already become a warrior. It had happened too quickly. If the princes found out through the queen, they would definitely find a way to incriminate him. But Johann was still very weak, he needed to become stronger. Concubine Yun asked Lin if it was true that a warrior not only had to take pills but also develop martial skills and meridians. Lin confirmed that it was true, but even the lowest level exercises cost more than 500 silver coins. They couldn't afford such exercises, especially because the queen would not grant him access to the library. It seemed like they had only one option. However, concubine June asked Lin what she was going to do about contacting their family. They had stopped communicating with them 3 years ago. She wasn't sure if they would help the 9th prince. Tearfully, Lin replied that for Johann's sake, she was willing to kneel and ask for their forgiveness. Concubine June noticed that Lin wasn't to blame for what had happened. 3 days had passed since the conversation between Lin and concubine June. Johann continued to train every day, improving his strength and learning new exercises. He trained on rocks and became stronger, improving every part of his body. The 9 days of training in the inner space had borne fruit, and he had finally learned the first move of the dragon and elephant hand technique, which was perfect for him at this stage. However, he needed to enhance his body. His K-pool was already full, and he could develop a new meridian, but he didn't know where to get another bottle of cerebral cortex cleaning liquid. Suddenly, concubine Yun approached him and asked what he was doing there. His mother had been looking for him everywhere and couldn't find him. Johann said that he had simply gone out for some fresh air and asked if she was feeling better. She replied timidly that the maids couldn't afford the medicines, so she was worried that the marriage would last at least 3 months. But she quickly changed the subject and told Johann that he was a very good man, and they should go to his mother because she had been waiting. They left the palace, and the prince asked where they were going. Concubine Yun quickly replied that they were going to Nainan, as they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Probably she was very happy that they were coming today. But it wasn't clear who Nainan was. However, from concubine Yun's words, it was clear that Johann had a special relationship with her. They departed and arrived in Lin village, but it wasn't the mother Lin's family name. Johann was surprised. If his mother came from a noble family, why weren't they supporting her? Why was she still suffering abuse in the Prince District village? Something must have happened. Lin told Johann that she was sure he was eager to meet Nainan, now that he had received his sacred mark, and they would have more common topics to discuss. She made sure he didn't miss his chance. However, Johann didn't understand who Nainan was at all. He couldn't comprehend the behavior of his mother and concubine Yun's sister. Someone approached Lin and told her to follow him, and the 9th prince could do whatever he wanted while he waited. Concubine June suggested that Johann and her go together to Nainan. Most likely, she is now at the training grounds where all the young Lin family members are studying. They agreed and went together to the stadium. Johann thought that the Lin family was considered prominent in the county of June. Upon arriving at the stadium, he observed with enthusiasm how other soldiers trained. He watched the exercises the soldiers were performing, releasing a unique force. This was the realm of the sword next to the heart. Their martial arts skills had reached the intermediate level of the Yellow Realm, much better than the 8th princes. Several young people in the crowd began to discuss that this was the 9th prince, who had also received the sacred mark. But what could he achieve when he was already 16 years old, and he had come to see Nainan? He showed no shame. Another person in the group mentioned that the prince was deeply in love with Nainan's sister. What expression would he have when he found out about her engagement to someone else? According to them, Nainan and the 7th prince were the perfect couple. Johann overheard this conversation between the two boys and clenched his fist with anger. He entered the palace, where a man was already waiting for him. The man told him that because the 9th prince had received his sacred mark, he should go to the Prince District Village Pavilion, where the book collection was kept. Concubine Din had come to him, and it turned out that he was Lin's elder brother. She pleaded with him to give her a book to help improve her nephew's skills. The 9th prince struck the throne with his hand and stood up abruptly. He asked Lin what right she had to discuss their family ties with him. He reminded her that 13 years ago, she had also come to the village and asked him for help. Why didn't she save her nephew, Chinyu? Lin mentioned that she had told him 3 years ago to leave, as the family had severed ties with her. She added that he shouldn't come back to them. Suddenly, Lin fell to her knees and cried. She couldn't understand how her brother could be so cruel to her. She asked to meet their father, but her brother replied that their father was in Omen Ridge and couldn't meet with him at the moment. He added that the 7th prince's engagement would take place soon, and Ninen's brother told the 9th prince to stay away from Ninen. Lin asked her brother why he thought she would be happy to marry just to benefit the Lin family, but her brother firmly assured her that it was solely Ninen's desire. In the stadium, everyone admired Ninen and exclaimed how beautiful and blessed she was. Ninen approached Johann and told him that they hadn't seen their cousin in a long time. She heard that he had received the sacred mark, but she added that the queen said his mark had no class, so it was no match for her cousin's mark. Johann was surprised by what he heard and realized that Ninen was actually his cousin. Nevertheless, he still had a strong liking for her. Ninen told Johann that receiving his mark at the age of 16 was a blessing from heaven. Despite this, he wouldn't have time to achieve great martial skills. However, the sacred mark would help strengthen his body, making him healthier and able to live like a normal person. She mentioned that they were close, but they were from 2 different worlds, and he should stop pursuing her. Johann responded that he was working hard and would try to catch up. Ninen understood that he would still chase after her, so she decided to tell him everything directly. She explained that she was currently at the intermediate level of the Yellow Realm, very close to the final level. As for her cousin, he most likely wouldn't even reach the intermediate level and should train step by step, avoiding inappropriate requests and taking on more than he could handle, as it would lead to suffering from his actions. Johann thinks that Ninen is very arrogant. Why did he like her then? Ninen adds that she hopes for her cousin's understanding. She tells him that in 3 months, when the Prince of Districts finishes his purification, her engagement to the 7th prince will take place. She mentally believes that Johann has given up. The crowd listens, hypnotized by their conversation, and comments that the conversation is becoming increasingly interesting. They wonder if the 9th prince will faint from what he heard, and if he does, it will be very amusing. Johann looks into Ninen's eyes and chooses the right words to respond. He turns and begins to leave but shouts his congratulations to them, stating that they are now twice as connected. The crowd is not pleased with this response, hoping for something more dramatic. Perhaps he would have lost his mind. Ninen thinks irritably about how he could react so calmly to such news. She shouts at him that she doesn't even want to know the reason behind this engagement, but Johann calmly says that he will attend the ceremony to congratulate them personally on their engagement. If there is nothing more to tell him, he would like to go find his mother. He leaves the stadium and meets his mother, who was crying. He runs to her and starts asking what happened, but she assures him that everything is fine and adds that it's time for them to leave. Lin's elder brother leaves the palace and brings a skill-learning kit called the Formulas, even though it's not even an intermediate level. The kit will help Johann reach the stage of cortical cleansing and canal advancement. It should be sufficient because they share the same meridians, so he can carry 2 bottles of cortical cleansing liquid with him. Lin tells Johann to thank his uncle, but now she understands why Lin was crying. She must have endured so much humiliation to obtain all this. However, he simply turns and tells his mother that it's time to leave and they shouldn't suffer the humiliation of the Lin family. The crowd doesn't understand what's happening or with whom the 9th prince has identified. Ninen is also surprised by her cousin's behavior and tells her father that she's acting very strangely. However, Her father tells her that everyone who receives a sacred mark starts behaving this way. He insists that she shouldn't pay attention to him and should focus on her own self-improvement. She agrees with her father that in any case, Ninen and Zen are destined to belong to completely different worlds. To advance to the intermediate level, Johann needs more liquid to cleanse the cortical brain, but one bottle of this liquid costs at least 2,000 silver coins. He is thinking about where to find it. Suddenly, he remembers that he can write down all the martial arts techniques he had read about in his past life and then sell them. There are 5 stages. In the practical skills and martial techniques, there are sacred, spiritual, king, and godly levels, and the higher the class of the martial art, the more challenging it is to practice. The Emperor Ming's imperial writing and the dragon and elephant pragna are sacred level elements, so he cannot sell them in the Kunlun territory. However, Zhuan still remembers some low-grade martial techniques and exercises, but it's all the same, and the low-grade techniques will astound the entire Yunyu County. Johann Chen began to understand that martial arts books were not so easy to copy or print. Still, he remembered the lowest class saint stage from his past life. For now, the middle class of this stage is his maximum achievement. But here, they could be considered the best, even for a large family like the Lins. The strongest technique is a low-grade technique and will consist of only 1 or 2 sets at most, unique to the Dzogchen family. He realized that the book would definitely pay off. He left the palace and approached the gate, where 2 guards were stationed. One of them asked Johann where he was going so late. Zhuan replied that he was going to an village to see Ninen and asked if they could open the gate. When Johann left, the guards began to discuss that if he weren't the son of the Yunyu County prince, he would have died a long time ago. As for Ninen, she is the most talented in the Lin family. She is engaged to the 7th prince, and Johann still hasn't given up. He's a real fool. When the gate closed, Zhen put on his cloak and tucked the spirit stone into his pocket. He arrived at the battle market, which was divided into 5 areas: the pharmacy, the weapon shop, the central auction, the animal market, and the slave market. To some extent, the battle market recognized all the ups and downs of Yunyu, so the district was very strict with its leaders. Only warriors or nobles were allowed entry. Johann decided on his own that he could make greater profits at the book auction. At the entrance, he encountered a woman who asked how she could assist him. Johann said he was looking for a deacon from the central auction. She responded that she would notify the deacon, but he was usually busy with VIP clients. She thought to herself that whoever this man was, he immediately wanted to meet the abbot after his arrival. He should be taken seriously. He returned with the deacon and brought him to Johann. The deacon immediately began to understand who this man was, as he wore golden Kylin shoes, usually worn only by people from the royal palace. He invited Johann to go with him, and the prince agreed kindly. Zok deliberately wore these boots to impress them since many people would desire a low-level sword technique book, and Zen wasn't strong enough to protect it personally. The chief appraiser was brought to Johann, and he said he wanted to auction his treasure. First, he took his spirit stone in his hand, then he pulled out a book, revealing that it was a low-grade martial sword technique book from the saint stage. The head appraiser and the auction deacon were impressed if it was indeed what he claimed it to be. In that case, the starting bid for this book would be 200,000 silver coins, but the buyer would first have to confirm that it was indeed a low-grade finalizing technique. If not, the auction would not be valid. Zen agreed that everything would proceed according to the auction house's rules. After Johann's conversation with the chief appraiser and the auction deacon, several hours passed. An assistant to the deacon approached him and told him that his book had been purchased by the head of the Lin family for 1,240,000 silver coins. Now, he discovered who bought his book. The deacon introduced the Lin family head and presented him as a buyer of sacred sword techniques. The head of the Lin family immediately noticed Zen's golden Kylin shoes and understood that he was an important person in the royal court. He introduced himself as Lin Fanson, the head of the Lin family, and asked for Zen's name. However, Zhen replied that it wasn't necessary and handed over the brief formulas of sacred sword skills and the position images, asking Fanson to confirm them. Fanson confirmed that these were indeed low-class positions from the saint stage. Furthermore, these drawings were made by a disciple of the celestial realm. The Lin family's foundations would become much stronger with this book. Fanson praised the book's value and thanked Johann for such a valuable book. He added that it was time for them to leave. As the Lin family left, they began to discuss that this child reminded them of someone. The father mentioned that he must have seen him once in the palace. In any case, he was not an ordinary person and could be intimidating. Ninen didn't understand what her father was talking about, but he mentioned that the drawings were new, they were probably made today. However, anyone who could write about sacred sword skills must be in the higher levels of the heavenly realm. Ninen was surprised because not even her grandfather had reached the heavenly realm. She asked her father if he was some kind of important person in the palace, and why he needed so many silver coins and why he was selling sacred sword techniques. Her father explained that there were 8 martial arts in the realm, but sacred sword skill didn't belong to any of them. However, they shouldn't delve into it, as they couldn't afford to do anything against a person from the heavenly realm. He told Ninen that she had the mark of the sacred sword, so she would be the one to practice according to this book. If she could master the first art of the sacred sword technique, she would definitely be the best in the annual assessment. Ninen fully agreed with her father's words. Everything Johann Chen received from the auction was transferred to the VIP card. He exchanged 20,000 silver coins for spirit crystals and kept the remaining 8,000 silver coins. Hakel turned to the young man in the shop and asked for 20 bottles of bone marrow cleansing liquid, 200 pills for blood, some refined powders, and energy pills. Johann Chen thought in his mind that the refined powder and energy pills could accelerate the self-cultivation process. They were expensive, but they were worth it. Johann remembered that he had also forgotten the regeneration cream. Having taken everything from the store, he quickly returned to the Yun Palace. Yun was in the courtyard when she saw Johann. She asked why he hadn't gone to bed yet, as it was very late. He gave the concubine the cream he had bought for her and added that it would help her hand heal faster. Yun was happy but didn't understand where Johann got the money for it because even the lowest class recovery cream cost at least 200 silver coins. He told her that he had secrets he couldn't share at the moment and hoped that she wouldn't tell them to his mother. It seemed that the 9th prince had a great opportunity, and everyone expected him to reach great heights in martial arts in the future. Johann told June that he wondered if his mother was the sister of President Lin, so why did she cut all ties with her family? What happened 3 years ago? Yun replied that they had hidden it from Johann to protect him because his health was very weak. However, since he received his sacred mark, he had the right to know the truth. June began to tell Johann about Lin Chinyu, a genius from the Lin family who was Johann's cousin and the eldest son of Mother Lin. He completed the Yellow Realm at the age of 17, but 3 years ago, Lin Chinyu insulted an even more exceptional genius, so they broke his legs and sent him to the celestial prison. Johann couldn't believe it. He asked how this could happen in the Lin family, which was considered one of the largest families in Yunyu County. Who dared to arrest the great genius of the Lin family? This person must have been even more influential. June replied that it was true. The person who insulted Lin Chinyu was the 7th prince, the brightest star in Yunyu County. Compared to him, anyone would pale. Now, Johann understood everything that had happened in the Lin family. After Chinyu was imprisoned, the head of the Lin family urgently went to the palace and began to plead with Queen Lin, appealing that if Lin Chinyu could be saved, their family would pay any amount of money. They then decided to go to the king, but the queen stopped them, and they had a dispute. The queen was very angry and ordered Chinyu's whipping 30 times. However, by the time the flogging ended, Chinyu was on the verge of life or death. Johann was very angry at what he heard. He couldn't understand how this could happen. He asked how King Yunyu reacted to all of this. Yun replied that the 7th prince was the most talented of all the king's children, and the king loved him very much. The king discovered the whole truth that it was Qinyu's fault that nearly killed the seventh prince. The king was very upset and thought that the queen didn't know how to do the right thing. He didn't allow them to flog the seventh prince and the queen for it. So, everyone yelled at his mother, thinking that her inability to negotiate was the reason for losing the family's genius. After that, she was no longer seen as a member of the Lin family. Johann asked if Lin Qinyu had been executed, but Jun replied that this was not the case. His Highness, the seventh prince, didn't allow it to happen so easily. Qinyu was taken to the palace, made a eunuch, and then sent into slavery. Johann couldn't understand how the first genius of the Lin family became a eunuch and fell into slavery, which was a great shame for the Lin family. However, Jun still didn't understand why the head of the Lin family allowed the engagement of the seventh prince and his daughter after all the humiliations the family had suffered. Considering the talent of the seventh prince, he would definitely become the heir to the throne, and if the Lin family wanted to establish a foothold in Yunyu County, they should restore their relationship with the seventh prince and commit to something like that was the best option, given that the first family of geniuses had become a servant of the seventh prince. The relationship between the Ling family and the seventh prince is not entirely friendly. Maybe Lin Qinyu contributed to this engagement, but these are just Johann's assumptions. Now, he's going to bed, and Yun should return as soon as possible. The opening of the Divine Battle Seal had actually changed everything for the ninth prince. If Mother Lin knew, she would be very happy. Strength in the modern world won't be simple for anyone. You won't achieve anything in this life. Johann is convinced that he can't waste time. He needs to open the third meridian tonight to reach the center of the Yellow Realm. The Sutra of the Nine Divine Emperors can cultivate 36 meridians. In his past life, Johann cultivated 33 meridians and was almost invulnerable among his peers. Now, in the world, even the strongest only have 31 meridians. If Zhen wants to reach the final stage of the Yellow Realm, he needs to open 3 more meridians. He trained all the time and put all his effort into it, almost succeeding. He managed to open the third meridian. To continue his journey to the final stage of the Yellow Realm, he needed a complete supply of K. He needed K accumulation pills to restore his K supply. He took a K pill and ate it to restore his resources. He had only opened 70% of the meridian, but the pill couldn't fully restore his resource reserve. It was a good thing that he still had some silver coins. If he could improve his cultivation soon, it would be worth spending some money on it. But that's not enough, he still needs a body purification bath to strengthen his body, otherwise, he won't be able to make better use of true Kyber. Hours passed, and Johann got into the bathtub. The body cleansing powder was so strong that his skin and flesh seemed to change shape. But he understood one very important thing: only by passing all the tests was it possible to become a man. The time and space stone gave him 3 times more training time, which was his unique advantage. Only 9 days had passed in the real world, but a whole month in the spirit stone, and he had reached a complete reserve of true K in the Yellow Realm. It was a real miracle. After washing his body with a bath, Johann continued his training. His last sweats were coming out of him. Medicinal baths are really effective, and body hardening also plays a significant role in his improvement. Today, Dzogchen will be able to prepare for the final stage of the Yellow Realm. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and said they had completed the assigned task. Johann opened the door, and Yun stood there happily. She told him that she had bought all the jewelry that Mother Lin had left behind. Johann was satisfied and said that if his mother decided to pawn her jewelry again in the future, Yun could buy them back without worry. But Jun suggested that he tell his mother the whole truth. If she finds out that he has become a true martial artist, she will be very happy. Johann said he wanted to surprise her at the end of the annual test. Besides, his current level was not high enough, he needed to become stronger. He also asked the concubine to make sure that no one disturbed him today. She replied that she would guard the door and stop anyone who tried to interfere with the ninth prince's training, even at the cost of her life. She added that she believed in Johann, he would succeed. The opening of the 4th and 5th meridian was very successful, but the sixth one was still lacking. It had to be attempted, and why not try it? Dzogchen took another K restoration pill, and after that, he felt a great surge of strength. And here it is, the long-awaited goal has been achieved, a breakthrough to the final stage of the Yellow Realm. He went out and saw concubine June protecting him to ensure that no one bothered Johann. While he was training, she asked, surprised, if he had managed to do everything he had planned. Johann approached the concubine, looked up at the sky, and exhaled calmly like a mobile elephant and wild dragon. Johann began to demonstrate the techniques he had learned, the spiritual dragon and elephant palm, then he showed the reception of the other palm, followed by a dragon flying in the sky that could crush everything in its path. Zen was pleased with his achievement and began to understand that he was no longer that sickly child. June observed all this and admired Johann's martial skills. She told him that he had finally succeeded, even saying that he had even more talent in martial arts than His Majesty the Seventh Prince. King Swan-Yard is one of the top 3 shops in the city of Dan. Zen advises everyone to visit this store and see if they can find anything there. An elderly man approached Dun and offered to sell K accumulation pills. Jen was surprised by how he approached him so imperceptibly. He introduced himself as Moan Lin, the owner of this store. Zok asked for 50 K accumulation pills and 30 body purification pills but wasn't sure if King Swan Pavilion would have all the stock. Moan was very surprised because an ordinary martial artist could not easily afford K accumulation pills and body purification pills, especially such a large quantity. It was really rare. The merchant replied that if Master Chen were in another store, maybe he wouldn't have been able to buy so many pills. But his store in King Swan Pavilion had enough to satisfy all of Master Chen's desires. Moan brought everything Johann requested, and after calculating the total amount of the purchase, he announced that it would cost 80,000 silver coins. The seller added that since Master Chen was buying such a large batch of products, he would be happy to offer him a discount. The total amount with the discount would be 72,000 silver coins. Johann paid for the purchase and said he would now only buy pills from this store. Moan Lin smiled and asked if he needed anything else. Johann replied that he needed something else, but it's possible that this store doesn't have that product. The seller immediately understood that he needed a marvelous weapon. Johann wondered how he guessed so easily. They have several pavilions that sell weapons, this child would lead Johann there. His name is Zui. Moan also asked his assistant to take the owner to the woman and tell her that they value this customer very much and should give him a discount. But his assistant said in fear that he wouldn't go with her because she is capable of taking a man's soul with just one look. If she sees him, he will be finished. Moan said that as he was still a young child, and if he refused, he might take 0K accumulation pills from here this month. The assistant got scared and agreed to guide Master Chen. They said goodbye to Master Mo, who, in turn, said he would wait for him again. Zok asked the assistant if this woman was really so beautiful that she could take a man's soul. The man on the street said it was true, this demon woman could cause a heart attack with just one glance. She was engaged to 7 bosses, and all 7 died on their wedding night, and she took all their property. Even the head of Zui had worked for her recently. They approached the City of Arms. The security guard said he had sent someone to this woman to provide information and ask her to wait a bit. The woman asked how they had presented the buyer, perhaps Monling or the head of the family was the owner of King Swan Pavilion. Kinya said she was a little tired, so she would finish work for today. The assistant replied that he was just an ordinary teenager, about 16 or 17 years old. Kinjin King already liked him a lot, her tiredness disappeared suddenly, and she told him to go to the inner hallway. He went to the central hall and waited for King Xian Kinya to enter. She asked if she had made a mistake in saying that he was a dear guest, the young Master Chen of Kingin Pavilion. She asked what kind of weapon he would like to buy. He must already have an idea. Fortunately, his mental strength is quite high, so it's not so easy to seduce him. Johann said that he needed a sword at the level of a true battle treasure. Now he understood why Monling wanted to meet him in person. It was astounding that a teenager had such strong mental power. The woman told Johann that, as he was an important guest of King Swan Pavilion, she would personally take him to the armory and show him all the weapons they had in stock. They went to the armory together. Zui was still nervous because more than one man who entered the armory alone with the chief's wife did not return alive. He was worried that Lord Chekano might also have bad luck. Common people use common weapons, and only a martial artist can unlock the full potential of a true martial weapon, depending on the materials used in its making and the number of letters on the weapon. A true martial treasure can be divided into 9 classes, with the first being the lowest and the 9th the highest. The owner offered Zen to choose any sword he liked and encouraged him to ask any questions he had. Johann thanked her and was amazed by what he saw. The 9th prince spotted the sword he wanted. It was called De Pabis. This sword was very ancient, with a history of nearly 1,000 years. It was extremely heavy and sharp, and its material was also very special. However, another expert couldn't determine what it was made of. If this sword had not been damaged, it would have been a true battle treasure of at least the 7th rank, or even higher. But all the inscriptions on the blade were broken. If the young master wanted to buy it, she was willing to sell it for the price of a first-order true treasure. Johann asked how much it would cost, and the owner replied that it would be 1,000 silver coins. He responded that he was buying the same sword that Silo had given him 800 years ago. When a person dies with their sword, the same thing happens, and as they had to be reborn, the sword was also reborn from a profound abyss. Johann would entrust the sword to purify its life and reappear in all its splendor. The woman wondered how it was possible for the sword to look better than her. She approached Johann, hugged him, and asked if he was only going to buy this broken sword or if he could buy something else. King Xian Qinya whispered in Johann's ear, "Perhaps you're interested in something more besides the sword?" She asked, trembling, how much that real battle artifact cost. This sword that shines with the soul is the 4th level of a real battle weapon. It has 14 blades on its blade, 4 of them are power blades, 4 are ice power blades, 4 are electric power blades, and 2 are light blades with 3 attributes, ice, electricity, and light. She replied that it was worth 30,000 silver coins. Johann realized that he couldn't stay alone with this woman any longer, it was quite dangerous, and he was worried about not lasting. He quickly made a calculation, took his swords, and escaped from there. The woman said that he runs fast but can't escape from her. She suggested that the future would be very entertaining. Someone served tea and told the 8th prince to indulge himself. His mother and the master of the Red Sky are from the same family, so he will also call this girl sister. This was her first visit to the royal city, so he takes care of her. This is the largest martial arts store in the entire city. She asked what exactly the girl was interested in. The girl thanked the 8th prince and introduced herself as Yangling. She came to this city to meet talented and outstanding people, especially the 7th and 8th princes. The 8th prince mentioned that it was unfortunate that the 7th prince was currently out of the realm and wouldn't participate in the annual evaluation. However, he suggested that he might return to see the ceremony and offered to reserve a seat for her at the ceremony if she wanted. Xianglin thanked the 8th prince once again. The 8th prince noticed the weapons of his 9th brother in the store and wondered why they were there, as he hadn't even trained properly yet. He also bought weapons. He was curious about where he got the money. The 8th brother hoped that Johann wasn't trying to pass himself off as a handsome guy for the sake of the owner of King Swan Pavilion. The owner of the pavilion warned Johann that if he did anything embarrassing, she would break his legs. She emphasized that it was her store, not the royal palace, and if she hit him, the 8th prince would have to intervene. The 8th prince was puzzled about why the 9th prince was disgracing the royal family. The 7th prince was the prince of the entire world, and the 9th prince had become the plaything of a woman willingly. Johann didn't understand why both of them were looking at him so strangely. He quickly left the store. The owner shouted at him to come and see her from time to time. She would take care of him, and if he needed additional resources, he shouldn't be shy and should come to his landlady. Over the past 800 years, many things had changed, and things had become different. Now, the ancient sword no longer possessed its old sharpness. To restore the blades and the power of the sword itself, it would be necessary to take it to a blacksmith of at least the 5th level. But was there such a blacksmith in the county of Yunu? Even if this sword turned into a pile of scrap, Johann should take it as a reminder that he had become stronger so he could take revenge on Silo. He also felt very curious about the effect of the other sword purchased at the municipal pavilion. The power blades activated, and the soul blow sword became almost 50 kilograms heavier. It was very heavy, and Johann couldn't control it. But if he learned to summon the 4 power blades and use them skillfully, then his power would be unimaginably great. He had a problem: he couldn't activate the second blade because he had very little true K. He needed to use other attributes of the blades first. He managed to activate the ice layers, then the electricity layers, and even the light layers. The 30,000 silver coins were not wasted. He should hurry with his training and activate all 14 letters as soon as possible. That way, he could maximize the potential of the 4th level true battle weapon. 2,000 years passed. In the Jade Palace, the 8th prince continued to train and improve. Finally, he reached the small stage of the Yellow region. His mother, Lady Xiao, said that even now, his cultivation couldn't be compared to the level of other princes. When his father sees his progress, he will definitely reward him. The 8th prince said that anyway, some had already hit rock bottom. His presence made him look even better. His mother realized he was talking about the 9th prince who had just received his sacred mark. Maybe he didn't even have the level of cerebral cortex cleanliness and pulse, so he most likely wouldn't participate in the annual evaluation. The 8th prince said it wasn't up to him to decide whether to participate in the annual evaluation or not. Everyone came to the Lin family martial arts arena. The daughter of the Lin family continued training and practiced the heart control sword technique. She finally succeeded. Her family stood up and rejoiced that she was the daughter of the heavenly family itself. Her family was in good hands. Her father said that her talent in the art of the sword amazed him. He had never seen such a strange talent in anyone. In less than 3 months, she had mastered the spiritual level of the sword technique. She would be the brightest star in the world in the upcoming annual competition. She replied that it was thanks to her long cultivation of the sword that guided the heart that she could learn this technique so quickly. There were only 10 young geniuses in the city who had achieved the level of the heart-guiding sword at the age of 20, and she was only 15 years old. She had limitless potential, so let her train more and reach the highest heights. Her father agreed and continued training. At the same time, Johann was training in the palace. He mentioned that he had been cultivating in the spirit stone space for almost 6 months. His reserves were full, and his physical characteristics had reached their limit. Although he was still not at the level of metamorphosis, it was time to start mastering the small stage of the Yellow region. Now, he was physically much weaker than in his past life, but after such a long time, he could easily open the 11th meridian in the small stage of the Yellow region. He took a sip of the restorative liquid. Johann felt a great surge of strength. He finally reached the small stage of the Yellow region. It was necessary to check what he was capable of now because he didn't know how strong he had become. Several days passed, and Johann ventured into the mountains of the royal palace. He tested the barbarian elephant galloping technique, which required channeling all his strength into his hands. It wasn't bad, and the explosive power of this hand was equivalent to the power of 8 bulls. He needed to try the sword technique again. His current supply of true K was almost enough to activate 2 blades at the same time. First, he activated the power and heart control card of Naze. He performed a sky strike reception that sucked the heart. He managed to do this trick very well. This technique could only be performed when the sword followed your heart. It seemed that Johann was already close to the heart area of the sword. If this technique was performed on people, their eyes would rise to their foreheads in surprise. He wanted to try something else, a defensive sword technique. He tried the heart sound sword technique. This technique was enough to defend against the entire arsenal of a Yellow region martial artist. To perfect these techniques, it was necessary to practice here before the annual evaluation. The next day, Johann went out to the palace courtyard and met concubine Yun. He asked if there was an evaluation today, and she said yes. She warned him to be careful as there were rumors that the 8th prince had broken through to the small stage of the Yellow region and would definitely target Johann. Zuan had discovered the secret of concubine Yun. In fact, she had also reached the small stage of the Yellow region, but until now, she had only discovered 11 meridians, so she still had a lot of work to do. But there was very little time left. She was surprised because only true geniuses could open all 8 meridians of the small stage of the Yellow region. Even the 7th prince had only opened 10 meridians, and it was enough for him to achieve true glory. She would help the 9th prince keep the secret, but she warned him to be very careful. Johann reassured her and said he would be careful. June told Johann that she would help him put on royal clothes, and then he could go to the real martial arts field in the Royal Mountain. Johann asked if his mother would see the annual evaluation. June said yes, but she didn't know that Johann would also participate in the annual evaluation. She would be very happy to see Johann become a martial artist. June congratulated Johann, saying he was more of a prince than any other prince. Johann recovered, went out to the courtyard, and told June that he was heading to the real battlefield.